Hello and welcome. Today is the first episode of my new series, Compliance is Sexy, or A Day in the Life of a Real Estate Broker. Hi everyone, my name is Jason Lopez and I am the managing broker for Real Broker in California. And what I want to try to accomplish with this series is just pulling the curtain back a little, giving you a sneak peek of what happens behind the scenes when it comes to real estate transactions. So, when I say real estate broker, most of you probably think about your agent, your realtor, the person who helped you buy, sell, or invest in your real estate. And that could be the case. But what I really want you to understand, and what my main focus is going to be on, are the managing brokers, the designated brokers, the brokers of record, the brokers in charge. These are the men and women behind the scene who ensure that your transaction goes smoothly. And if your agent is doing a great job, probably 90 to 95% of all the issues and challenges that come up during a typical real estate transaction are going to be handled by them. It's that 5 or 10% of the time when things might get a little sideways where they're going to need to come to somebody like me and get a question answered, get a solution to a problem that has come up. That could be around a disclosure issue, maybe a potential legal issue, on occasion an accounting issue, and of course, for the most part, we're not accountants or attorneys, so we'll refer that you seek the proper information from those folks. But we can address a lot of stuff, and so that's what I really want to focus on with this series is just what happens behind the scenes to make sure transactions are compliant, that the risk is minimized, and that everybody walks away at the end of the day feeling really good about that transaction, right? So that's what I want to focus on today. So let me back up a little bit, and I want to talk about, at least in California, the two licensing tiers that we have. Now, I think most folks in California hold what's known as a salesperson's license, okay? And as a salesperson, you can't just go out on your own and help people buy and sell real estate. You need to affiliate that sales license with a broker's license, somebody who holds a broker's license. Now, that could be a small independent mom and pop operation, or it could be a big national franchise operation. But again, as a sales licensee, you need to affiliate your license with a broker. Okay? Now, if you hold a broker's license, it creates some options for you, which are actually kind of cool. Now, in that case, if I have a broker's license like I do, and I have done this in the past, I can simply go out and open my own company, and maybe I just work on my own as a one-man band. Maybe I have other agents, other sales agents that affiliate their license with me, and so they're working under my direction as well. So as a broker licensee, I have those options, right? I can go out on my own as a solo practitioner without having to affiliate with another broker, or maybe I have other agents that also work under me. There is another option there, which is quite common for folks who hold broker's licenses, is they actually affiliate their broker's license with another broker, known as a broker associate. And for the most part, those folks are out doing typical real estate sales transactions, helping people buy, sell, and invest in real estate. As a salesperson, they just do it as a broker associate. So again, there are some benefits to having a broker's license in terms of how you may want to operate and run your business, which is again pretty cool. So what I want to cover in this first episode in terms of the responsibilities and duties of a managing broker, again, a designated broker, broker of record, when you have other agents, other sales licensees or broker associates that are working under your license. The first thing I want to mention is everything they say and do out in public with their clients and prospects might as well be me as the broker of record saying and doing those things. There is a close connection there. This is why I think it's super important that as an agent or broker associate, that who you affiliate with is a big a big concern and something that you should not take lightly. You should interview different brokers. You may not meet the broker initially when you interview at a company. It might be a manager who is not necessarily the broker. And so I would insist that you have an opportunity to have a conversation with the broker of record who is ultimately responsible for everything that you say and do out in the field. In my case, I think one of the benefits of working with me is I've been around a long time, almost 30 years in the business, most of which has been spent as a broker in charge. I am also very involved in the industry. I think this is really important. People don't understand how important relationships and reputation are out in our business. Oftentimes, transactions are put together strictly based on those relationships, knowing that that other agent is going to be really good to work with because you've had a past transaction or multiple transactions that you've worked on, and so you can feel good about that. It's the same thing with the brokers. I know for me, I get calls all the time from another manager or broker saying, "Hey Jay, there's a little bit of an issue. I was so happy to find out it was you that was going to be on the other end of this conversation. We don't know how it's going to go down and how we're going to rectify it, but at least we know it's going to be handled professionally." And so I think it's critical that your broker has good relationships in the community, a good reputation, and is able to get problems solved when they come up. For me, one of the things I love to do, and it's a big part of my daily life in this business, is I'm very involved in our Association of Realtors. I'm the president-elect of our local association. I'm also a director with the California Association of Realtors, and I also serve on the operations committee of the largest MLS in the country, the California Regional Multiple Listing Service. So again, not to brag or anything, it just gives me an opportunity to stay in tune with what's going on in our industry, things that affect our profession. Things change all the time. Recently, we have had some major revisions and new contracts and disclosure forms, which is always happening. Usually once or twice a year, we have revisions of those things. So understanding those changes, the new forms, the new documents that we need to use are super important. So I think who you work with, making sure that they are in tune with all the things, all the changes that are constantly happening in this business, super, super important. But I wanted to go back to talking a little bit about the risk management aspect of what we do as brokers. So we know going in that when we open a transaction, we have a buyer and seller that have come together. And we're going to be moving forward on a closing now in escrow, we call it in California. And not all states use escrow. Some are attorney closing states, if you could imagine. But we're going to have a period of time, let's call it 30 days, to get through that transaction. And there are lots of hurdles, right, that we need to overcome, and obstacles and challenges that are going to come up. And so having a strong broker who understands how to mitigate the risk on the front end as much as possible is really, really critical. So a lot of that starts with making sure that your agents are regularly trained on those forms and those documents. I'll give you an example. We recently had a major revision with our purchase agreement, the residential purchase agreement here in California. Okay, it's 16 pages. Okay, in a typical transaction, you're going to have well over 100 pages of documents, sometimes even 200 or 300 pages, depending on reports that we may need to get and things of that nature. So there's a lot of moving parts, right? And with this new purchase agreement in California, it wasn't just like, changing some words around. It was completely redone. The first 3 pages in particular, where most of the major terms are made part of the contract, it's completely different, right? So because I'm a director with the California Association, I was able to be involved in how that was progressing. In fact, one of our association members actually chaired the forms committee at the state level, so helped develop those forms. So we were doing trainings on that stuff before the forms even came out, and way before most other brokers are doing training on that. So again, making sure that our agents know what's happening and that they're trained properly to utilize those documents. I'll give you one other example, and it has to do with some technology that has become very prominent in our industry. And honestly, looking back over the last 10 or 15 years, with all the technological advances that have happened in the world and in real estate, this is probably the number one biggest impact in terms of a technology that's come along that's really benefited real estate, and that is electronic signatures, digital signature, HelloSign, DocuSign, those types of platforms have created incredible efficiencies in our business, streamlined a lot of what we do, and that's been amazing. The downside is that agents now have gotten lazy with utilizing those platforms. In other words, in a lot of cases, they're not taking the time to sit down and review the documents that their clients are signing. They'll just put it into one of those platforms, set it up where they need to sign an initial and email it off. And those clients are just clicking buttons and signing things that they haven't even read or understand necessarily. Okay? So again, a good broker is going to make sure their agents are being trained on how to go through those contracts, understanding that we're not attorneys, we're not accountants, so if they have specific questions about those issues, we need to refer them to the appropriate professionals. But if I just send it off and I don't explain that, they're just signing things that you could be creating horrible consequences for them just because you didn't take the time to explain something. And I'll give you a real world example with this new contract. As I review the documents and I review every file that our agents are doing on all their transactions, I see every single transaction file. And there's a pattern of things that happen. With that new contract, again, 16 pages, lots of places for them to sign an initial. And I always see if they're missing initials, it's almost always the seller's initials at the very bottom of page 15 and page 16. Okay? There is a clause in the contract known as an arbitration clause. And what it basically says is that if any disputes arise between the parties, the buyer and the seller, that they will either go to arbitration or go to court, go to a jury trial after first going to mediation. Mediation is always in there, but they can elect to go to arbitration or not. But if only one party initials the arbitration clause and the other party does not, which happens a lot, I have to bounce that back and say, hey, look, we need clarification on how we're going to handle a dispute if it comes up, right? Only one party initialed it. We need to clarify it, either in a counteroffer or an addendum, so that we know exactly how that's going to be handled, right? So it's paying attention to detail, making sure your agents are trained properly, and then trying to mitigate the risk on the front end as much as possible so that when problems come up, we can solve those problems. Okay? So, hey, that's what I wanted to cover in this first episode, just kind of explaining what Compliance is Sexy is all about, giving you a little sneak peek into the day, a day in the life of a real estate broker, and kind of what we do behind the scenes to make sure your transactions go smoothly and that you're protected. In the next session, I want to get into kind of the specific flow of a transaction. Like, once you've accepted an offer, what are your safeguards? What are your contingencies? What happens if negotiations get bogged down? How do we solve some of those problems? So stay tuned. I'll look forward to coming back and seeing you guys soon. And I appreciate you tuning in. Take care.